What's up everybody, Mr.Hawk here, and I'm here to introduce you to the fundamentals of art. Think of these elements like learning music notes or practicing ballet positions in dance. Art is a new lens in which to see the world, and the following lessons will teach you the proper method of engaging with that worldview. Become disciplined in your craft, and you will find freedom to express yourself in ways you can only imagine. We start our journey gazing upon the empty void. That is our canvas. It is the collective imagination of all human thought and creativity. It is where we go to dream, to stretch our imagination inward and outward. Like fools, we were once fumbling in the darkness. But with these fundamentals of art, we will learn and become equipped to contend with the void and master it and manifest our creativity within it. Now, let's get creative. So, for today's lesson on the fundamentals of art, we will be reviewing the first three concepts, which are line, shape, and form. I would like for you to follow along with me by taking a piece of paper and dividing it up into three sections as we review each concept. So, a line is a single point, dot, that's a point, moving along in one dimension, indicated by that single line. A shape is taking that single line and making it consecutive, bringing it into the second dimension. So we have one line going this way, that's one dimension, and now we have two dimensions. So, when we have the same lines mirrored one another, there and there, that makes a shape. That's a two-dimensional shape, a square. And so then form, we pull that out into the third dimension. That is length, width, height, and so this is how we would indicate form. So let's go back to the line. The line is the most important and primitive element of art. Being in the first dimension, it can be created by any kind of marking tool, on any kind of medium, on various kinds of surfaces. For today, we're just using a pencil and a piece of paper. Geometry gives us things like parallel, perpendicular, and intersecting lines, as indicated here. Those are parallel, perpendicular, and intersecting. See, we have parallel lines that create shapes and forms as well. It's all geometry. However, art gives us what I call gesture lines. Gesture lines are indicated by the common physical actions that we can all make when we pivot certain points in our body. So, these are represented best by CSI, because of the shapes of these gestures make. So C, the C line, is created simply by pivoting our wrist. Something like this. You see? The S is created by a natural swaying of our arm in a swift gesture. See? And an I line is created by a slicing motion, indicated by a confident intent. There you go. So those are our natural gesture lines. Then we have things like line weight and variation. It is the thickness of a line in context to the spacing of the lines around it. It's the weight that the line itself follows. So I can pick the pencil up a little bit, make it go a little thinner, and then make it go really thick. As you can see, it goes from thick to thin. Or, as I was saying, line variation being when you are drawing more and more lines together. As you can see, these are going from thin to thick. These are all elements that we can use to indicate certain things like texture, but we'll be going over that in the future. So now shape. Shape is a jump into the second dimension of geometry. The line can now evolve and connect to itself in order to create primitive shapes. Primitive shapes are things like squares, circles, triangles, or even pentagons. I completely messed that up, but don't worry, I fixed it. There we go, I forgot how many sides a pentagon had. So, These things make up the most common primitive shapes. There are countless variations of these shapes, and when combined, they can create a multitude of figures that represent images. Organic shapes are simply things like CSI lines combined with the primitive shapes. So let's take, for example, our gesture line here. Do a gesture like that, do another gesture, and bam. What does that look like? Kind of looks like a little water droplet. And so as you can see here, when you create and combine different primitive shapes, different CSI lines, you can create very unique things. Refer back to your worksheet to see other examples. We have now entered the third dimension. This is the final stop in terms of manifesting objects into our creative void, as you can see here. We have cubes, spheres, and now for spheres you want to indicate that by showing the contour lines. We have things like triangular prisms. There you go. But now, if you notice, these things all have the same faces, are their 2D counterparts. See, this cube has each side the same square. This triangle might have has equal sides as triangles, the same 2D shape. But then what happens when you change the face of these things to have contrasting shapes? You get things like a cylinder, which begins with a circle, but then you're pulling it down. There we go. Things like a cone, where you start with a circle, instead of just pulling it up like that, you're now making it come to a point, indicated by a triangle right there above the circle. You can make various other forms of 3D prisms in this manner. 3D forms are simply 2D shapes which have evolved to accommodate length, width, and height. When combined, organic shapes, CSI gestures, form, we are able to create many, many things, the least of which being the human figure. As you can see here, I start with a gesture line, right? Then I want to create some form. So we have a head right here, have a shoulder, have a foot, like that. There you go. Simple gestures to create a human body, roughly, albeit. But again, from these examples, what I'm trying to show you is that now that you understand line, shape, and form, we can begin exploring more complex things. There are various techniques and methodologies to mastering the skill of drawing, but we will go over more of those types of lessons in the future. So that about covers it all for today. For today's homework assignment, please just snap me a photo of what you drew on paper, just to show that you did follow along. Then please review the moment in art history where we're going to take the lessons we learned today, the concepts of line, shape, and form, and analyze them from the lens of our Paleolithic ancestors, the cavemen, and all of their cave paintings in France nearly 16,000 years ago. So be sure to review that art history moment in your worksheet, and we can practice our terminology, because I want you to begin to practice using these art terms so that way they become part of your everyday lexicon. So that is all for today's lesson. Be sure to email me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Remember, stay creative, and God bless.